Ladies and gentlemen, drivers, gig workers, and everyone in between, welcome to This Week in Rideshare podcast. I'm your host, Jared Hoffa. It is Friday, July 26th, and this week, workers get injured. An app arms drivers and the queen of rideshare mafia. Legal Rideshare breaks it down. And from Legal Rideshare, I'm joined by the co-founder and lead attorney, Bryant Greeny. Bryant, happy sunny Friday.
Happy Friday, Jared. Great to be back for yet another This Week in Rideshare.
Yet another this week. We had a nice little bump in viewers. A big thanks to Rideshare Rodeo for doing that. Love you guys. You guys are the best. And, it was hot topics last week. It's even hotter this week. We're going to get right into it. And this first one, although not specifically rideshare, definitely gig related and something that we actually deal with. And this is kind of startling, Bryant. Half of all Amazon workers get injured. Amazon Prime Day sales offer a lot more than just deals, apparently. This is from Scripps News, and they reported, quote, nearly half of Amazon's warehouse workers are injured during its Prime Day savings event, a Senate committee's investigation found. The report states Amazon's total injury rate, which includes those in the company, which surprisingly is not required to disclose to the Occupational Safety and Health Administration during its 2019 Prime Day event, was just under 45 injuries per 100 workers. And that's only according to Amazon's internal data. And when counting only those that are required to be disclosed to OSHA, the rate was more than 10 injuries per 100 workers, which is more than twice the industry average. Brian, I got to say, you have brought this up. We have had meetings about this. Once again, I think you were on the forefront of really realizing that this is a serious issue. This is no joke.
Yeah, it is no joke. And what we're seeing is that workers are being placed in hazardous conditions. They're being placed in situations where they're forced to work too fast. They're being forced to do things that are, lots of heavy lifting, lots of quick movements, lots of repetitive movements, things that are known to cause injuries in the workplace. And why are they being asked to do these things? Well, because Amazon puts intense pressure on them all the time, and then in particular during these Prime Days. Sales go way up. There's all these deals. Demand is super high, and the companies don't bring in enough people to meet that demand. So the regular workers, the ones who are, working the typical shifts, all of a sudden have to work harder, faster, longer to put more money in Amazon's pockets. And I can rest assured here, they're not making more. The workers are not being paid more for their work. They're just being asked to work harder, and they're being injured as a result.
Now, I don't know if you know this, because when I was reading this article, they talk about, right in the beginning here, it says, the company is not required to disclose a lot to OSHA. Do you know why that is? Why they're able to skirt that?
Yeah, so a lot of injuries don't have to be reported to OSHA if they don't meet certain thresholds in terms of severity. OSHA wants to know about injuries that require hospital trips, deaths, serious injuries, but what we're seeing is that a lot of times there are more, minor injuries, for lack of a better word, that don't get reported, but still put the employee or the worker in a really tough position. A strain, a sprain, laceration, even deep bone bruises, things of that nature, they might not make it to an OSHA report, but they can keep a worker off the line. They can make it so that a worker loses hours. Or is just hurting. I mean, we need to take into consideration the fact that there's real pain and suffering caused by these injuries. So it's a matter of severity in terms of when they're being reported to OSHA, but any worker who's injured needs to be accounted for. And what these internal documents are showing is that those numbers are actually quite high in comparison to the rest of the industry.
Yeah, and kind of as I mentioned in the beginning here, you were on the forefront of kind of this understanding how serious these injuries are with Amazon, the similar in the way you were with the Uber and Lyft accidents. And in fact, you launched Amazon Accident, which is specific to deal with this sort of stuff. If you want to talk on that, because we have mentioned it in the past.
Yeah, so one thing about Amazon injuries is that there is actually a lot of recourse. A lot of Amazon workers are entitled to workers' compensation. If somebody else is to blame for the injury, say you're a delivery worker and you fall on somebody's property, there's a dog bite, you name it. If you are injured working for Amazon, there are many ways that you could be compensated for the lost time, for your medical bills, for the pain and suffering that you endure. So Amazon Accident, we created, you can visit amazonaccident.com to check it out, is in place to help those types of workers. Legal Rideshare has been doing rideshare related, gig related work forever. And we've now seen that Amazon workers are just as vulnerable, facing similar issues, and are absolutely entitled to and can receive compensation when the inevitable injury occurs.
Awesome, yeah, and it just like I said, obviously it's This Week in Rideshare, but that was too important not to cover crazy stuff. We're gonna move on to the next article here. Also very interesting. We discussed this a little bit, I believe, last week or 2 weeks ago. A new app aims to arm drivers. Now, this is from Chicago Business, and they reported, quote, the BlackWolf app launched in Atlanta in 2023 with the stated goal of making ride-hailing safer. Not only are the drivers armed, they're also all former military, police, or private security with at least 4 years of protective experience. Now, BlackWolf recently applied for an operating license from Chicago's Department of Business Affairs, which rideshare firms must be granted before launching in the city. Now, they did tell the BlackWolf's application did not comply with its instructions, and the company needed to be corrected, but they did say, ultimately in the article, it's not a no, they just need to modify it. So, Brian, it looks like BlackWolf could very well be coming to Chicago.
Yeah, I'm on the record in saying I don't quite understand the concept of the company. I mean, I get that there's people feel uncomfortable in rideshare, and that is not a new statement. People feel like the safety is not up to par. We are of that stance as well. We wish that the companies were taking safety more seriously, that there were more mechanisms in place to create a safer environment for both drivers and passengers. Personally, I don't know that putting guns in the cars is the right answer. I don't think that this necessarily creates a safer environment. I think certainly the driver is going to feel more comfortable knowing that they're armed, but I don't know that the passenger feels necessarily more comfortable. This company is based on one, armed drivers, and two, drivers that have law enforcement backgrounds. We've seen plenty of situations where things go awry regardless of the person's background, regardless of if they're, ex-military, ex-police, ex-teacher. It doesn't really matter where someone has been trained. I think when tensions escalate, when something goes wrong, anybody can find themselves in a situation that they might not predict. And knowing that there's a gun in the vehicle, adding a gun to the vehicle, I'm just not sure that it makes it a safer experience. I think that there are just too many variables and too many things that can go wrong. And when there's a weapon, things can escalate quite quickly. Now, you and I spoke before. I can see certain situations where, like as a courier, it would be really beneficial to have a weapon in the vehicle. Say you're driving, alone, delivering food in a neighborhood where there's lots of violence and you might get carjacked.
Right.
I can see that. Say you're delivering or moving valuable items like jewelry from one location to another. Certainly that person needs to be armed. But putting two strangers in an armed vehicle together, I see a lot of problems.
Yeah, and it's also very interesting too, because as they say here, it's not just hey, we're gonna let drivers with a license to have a gun license be able to drive. They have to be former military, police, or private security, and they need at least 4 years of protective experience. So I can't imagine, I could be wrong, but I can't imagine the market is going to be that huge for that many drivers. It sounds very specific. Like you said, it almost sounds like this is something that would be ideal for like sensitive documents being relayed, or like a lot of money or jewelry or something. I'm not really sure what the angle is, but I mean they're coming here, so they're clearly growing.
Yeah.
Like you said, I just don't know where this is going to head and what's going to happen.
Look, I'm all for trying to innovate to a safer experience. We have said time and time again that rideshare needs to be safer, and it's up to the companies to come up with solutions. I would like to see technology being used, things like tracking, panic buttons that actually work. There are hundreds, thousands, millions of ways in which we can try to innovate to a safer experience. I'm just not personally of the opinion that putting guns in the vehicles is the best approach.
Right. Yeah, I couldn't agree more on this. I mean, again, as I usually say with these articles, I'm sure we're going to hear more about it, and we'll just see. I mean, eventually it'll probably make it here, and we'll be talking about it. So we will see. Now, our final story did come out last week, but it is a doozy. We didn't have a chance to talk about it. They are calling her the queen of rideshare mafia. One woman was responsible for creating thousands of fake driver accounts and ultimately made millions. This is from Wired, and they reported, quote, over the next few weeks, she would click through the driver onboarding process on both Uber and Lyft, reading over the steps to create her own account, mulling the risk. Finally, lying in bed on Christmas night, the first one she spent without her family, it was time. She opened her phone and scrolled to the blonde woman's license. She uploaded the license to the Uber app. She used the woman's name, but her own insurance and registration. She entered her iCloud email and phone number and set her own picture. Brown hair, brown eyes on the driver profile. She made up a fake social security number, submitted the application, and went to sleep. Boom, the next day, Uber approved the account. Like that, she was in business for herself. Yeah, you fast forward in the article and it explains the government said she pushed out some 2,000 accounts using hundreds of driver's licenses and profited more than $780,000. Brian, this story is a lengthy one. It's an incredible read. It's on Wired, going into detail about how she came to America with $100 in her wallet and ended up creating this just basically a legal, fraudulent service and made a business out of it. Just nuts. Really crazy.
It really is crazy. It reads like a Hollywood movie. It's like a Catch Me If You Can almost.
Yeah.
But it highlights something that's really important. And we talk about safety a lot. We talked about it with the last article. When Uber and Lyft and all the other companies are not doing enough to ensure that the drivers that they're putting on the platform are who they say they are, it creates a huge safety hazard for rideshare in general. And it's not really just a driver issue, it's a passenger issue as well. We need to make sure that everyone is who they say they are, that the people are vetted, that we know that drivers are coming from a safe background. With passengers, we need to know their name, their identity, their contact information. They need to have a real payment. I'm blanking on the word, but they need to have a credit card that's assigned to their name. There needs to be accountability. One of the most dangerous things that we can do in rideshare is have a lack of identification, anonymity. We're pairing unknown drivers with unknown passengers. If one of them's unknown, it's a safety concern. So this story is incredible. It's the story of a woman who created so many fake accounts, made a boatload of money. Like you said, it's a really interesting read, but it's really scary in a lot of ways what she was able to get away with, because it puts everybody who got in her vehicle or any account that she was renting to another person, it puts those people at risk. And it just highlights that more needs to be done at the company level to ensure that people aren't slipping through the cracks time and time. And as this article shows, time and time and time and time and time again.
Right. There's something that's also sort of, this article has been covered a lot, but there's something that was really interesting about when I first read it in the beginning of it. So, obviously she didn't start out doing this. She was trying to be a driver. And as we've talked about, and all these drivers know, one of the first things that happened to her was she was deactivated. And so without due process, she had to find a way to survive. And so she found a guy that helped her with the fake account. And 90% of these fake accounts were due to like she was getting deactivated drivers. So yet again, without a fair process of deactivations, drivers will find a way. They will find a way to get back on the platform because it's their livelihood. So it's better to just do it the right way and have a due process than it is to just have them circumvent everything. And like you said, now we're in a security, we're in a safety issue. Things get crazy fast. And it's something we've talked about a million times over.
Right. No, there's very little protection for drivers, as you mentioned, with the deactivations. And oftentimes good drivers, people who don't deserve to be deactivated, are kicked off the platforms after they have made so many changes to their lives to be in that gig work. They've quit traditional jobs. They've purchased vehicles. They have made changes to their family structure based on the hours in which they plan to work. And once those opportunities, particularly the Uber or Lyft gig, are taken away from them, then they become desperate. And that's when we start to see fraud. That's when we start to see people taking risks like this woman took. And things really quickly can snowball. And this is just one example of how that occurs.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a wild week, wild stories, I'll tell you that. Before we head on the weekend, though, I will give you the final say, and then we'll head off.
Yeah, we always remind everyone that Legal Rideshare is available for free consultations. Should you find yourself injured on the job, whether it be a car accident, a slip and fall, a dog bite, you name it, we can assist. We want to provide you the information that you need to set up a solid insurance claim, make sure that you're collecting all the damages that you're entitled to, whether it's medical bills, lost wages, pain and suffering. We want to put money in your pocket. So please do not hesitate to reach out to us, get that free consultation. And before I turn it back over to you, Jared, I do just again want to thank Steve over at Rideshare Rodeo and Kim at Kim's Side Money Plans. They are really helping us push the message, and we really appreciate everything they're doing.
Yes, you guys are awesome. Love you guys. Thank you again. And also, they've mentioned it. We've mentioned it multiple times. Please fill out our driver survey. We're giving away, raffling off $100 to 5 different people. All you got to do is fill it out. It takes you no more than a minute. We greatly appreciate it. But as I like to say, that is the end of this week in Rideshare. See you next week.